He walked in just before noon, when the place was buzzing with the weekday lunch crowd. His steps were slow, but steady. The kind of walk that came from years of discipline, now tempered by age. No one noticed him at first, just an old man in a clean but faded windbreaker holding a folded paper in his hand. He moved with quiet purpose, choosing a corner table by the window. He didn't look around, didn't try to catch anyone's eye, simply sat, looked over the menu, and placed the voucher down in front of him. It was a veteran's meal voucher. Slightly creased, edges frayed. You could tell he'd carried it for a while, maybe saving it, maybe unsure when or if he'd use it. But something about that day made him finally walk into that small diner on the corner. Maybe he was hungry, or maybe he just wanted to be somewhere warm for a little while. Across the room sat a group of younger people, 3 men. 2 women, all laughing over their food and their phones. One of them, a guy in a branded hoodie with a name tag clipped, on looked over and snorted. "Check this out," he whispered. "He's paying with Monopoly money." The others looked over and chuckled, loud enough for the old man to hear. One of them added, "Bet he's here for the free senior coffee too." More laughter. The veteran didn't look up. His eyes stayed on the table, but his hand resting on the voucher twitched just slightly. The cashier, a young man no older than 20, walked over and picked up the voucher, squinting at it. He hesitated, then said, "I'm not sure if we accept this. I'll have to check with my manager." Before the veteran could reply, the guy from the loud table called out, "Tell him to try the history museum next door." The whole group burst into laughter again. A few nearby customers glanced over uncomfortably, but no one said anything. The veteran gave a faint nod and reached out, slowly pulling the voucher back toward himself. His fingers were steady now, but his expression, it was unreadable. He wasn't angry, not embarrassed, just quiet, like a man who'd seen too much to waste emotion on ignorance. He folded the voucher once, then again, and began to slide it into his jacket pocket. That's when a young woman, sitting 2 booths away, quietly stood up. She'd been watching the entire time. She didn't say a word, just slipped outside, phone in hand. No one noticed her leave, certainly not the ones still snickering over their fries and iced teas. 3 minutes passed, then 4. At the 5th minute, the diner's door opened with a distinct jingle. Not rushed, not loud, but the atmosphere shifted instantly. 3 uniformed Marines walked in, their boots echoing on the tiled floor. The laughter stopped. Conversations paused mid-sentence. Even the clatter of dishes from the kitchen seemed too quiet. They scanned the room calmly. One of them spotted the veteran at the corner table and gave a respectful nod. The Marine at the front turned to the cashier and spoke clearly. "We heard there was a problem with honoring a veteran here." No one moved. The manager peeked out from the back, looking confused. The cashier stammered something about not knowing the policy. One of the Marines calmly replied, "Then let's make the policy clear." He walked over to the old man, took out his own wallet, and placed a $20 bill gently on the table. "Sir, your meal's covered. Order whatever you like." The old man looked up for the first time. There was no smile, no dramatic reaction, just a nod. Quiet, grateful, proud. Didn't say a word. He didn't have to. Meanwhile, one Marine turned and stood directly in front of the diner's glass door, not blocking it aggressively but firmly. The message was clear. No one was leaving just yet. The third walked toward the loud table. "We'd like to know," he said calmly, who thought it was funny to disrespect someone who served this country. The group was silent now, their confidence drained as quickly as their color. One of them mumbled it was just a joke. The Marine didn't even raise his voice. "Jokes are for friends. That man is a hero," no one answered. No one laughed. One woman from the group quietly picked up her tray and dumped it in the trash without a word. The veteran finally spoke, his voice low but steady. "It's all right. Boys, I've had worse days than this." One of the Marines turned to him and said, "Sir, we don't tolerate this kind of thing." Not anymore. Soft buzz filled the air. Respect, discomfort, and something else. Shame. Real heavy shame. It's the kind that sticks. The young woman who had stepped out earlier re-entered and sat quietly at her booth, not looking at the veteran. She gave a small smile. He nodded at her gently in unspoken thank you. She didn't need words either. The Marine who stood guard stepped aside, allowing customers to come and go again. But the mood had changed completely. The laughter didn't return. The whispers were gone. And as the veteran finally ordered a modest meal soup, bread, and a coffee, the room felt like it was holding its breath. The Marines didn't stay long. They paid, they saluted him as they left. And with that, they disappeared as swiftly as they had come, as he sat eating. A new server approached and refilled his coffee without being asked. She placed a slice of pie next to his plate and whispered, "On the house, sir." He didn't argue, just nodded. At another table, an older couple smiled in his direction. A young man removed his cap as he passed. And slowly, wordlessly, the room began to realize something important. They had almost let a hero eat alone, not because he asked for attention, not because he'd wore medals or demanded thanks, but because they forgot to look closely enough. By the time the veteran left, the sun had shifted outside. He stood, straightened his windbreaker, and placed the voucher back into his wallet, untouched. He hadn't needed it after all, and though no music played and no words were spoken, the door seemed to close with a reverence that hadn't been there before. As the door clicked shut behind him, the diner remained still for a moment longer. People stared at their plates, unsure what to say or how to act. The loud group, once so full of noise and jokes, sat in stunned silence, fidgeting with straws and napkins, their appetites suddenly gone. One of them glanced toward the window, watching the old man walk slowly down the street, his head high, his hands in his pockets, carrying nothing but dignity. At that moment, the truth settled over the room like a heavy fog. They had all been in the presence of someone far greater than they first believed. A man who had given more than they could ever understand. A man who didn't ask for respect but quietly deserved every ounce of it. And somehow, they had nearly missed it. The manager came out from behind the counter and approached the cashier, whispering something in his ear. The young man nodded slowly, his face pale. He stared at the empty table, then at the untouched $20 bill still sitting there. "What should I do with this?" he asked quietly. The manager didn't answer right away. He simply took the bill, folded it neatly, and placed it in the register with quiet respect. "Let it stay with the house," he said. "It's the least we can do." Outside, the veteran walked past a bus stop where two teenagers sat waiting. One of them looked up, then down at his phone, then back again. "Hey," he said softly, nudging his friend. "That guy. I think he's a war vet." His friend looked up, confused. "From what war?" The first boy didn't answer, but something about the way he stood straighter, more thoughtful, said the moment had touched him. Maybe he'd ask his grandfather something that night. Maybe he'd listen this time. Back inside the diner, a mother gently explained to her daughter what a veteran was. Her voice was soft, but full of pride. "They're the reason we can sit here in peace," she said. The little girl nodded, staring at the empty corner table like it was something sacred. The cashier, still shaken, stepped outside for a moment. He lit a cigarette with trembling fingers. He hadn't meant harm, not really. He just hadn't known. But now, standing in the cool afternoon air, he realized something. That man hadn't needed money. He hadn't needed food. He had needed only one thing: to be seen, a few blocks away. The old veteran stopped beneath a tree, pulled out the folded meal voucher, and looked at it for a moment. Then slowly and carefully, he tucked it into a worn notebook. A notebook filled with names and faces and memories that most people would never know. He didn't smile, but his eyes held something soft. Maybe satisfaction. Maybe peace. He knew that someone had remembered. Someone had stood up. And that, to him, meant everything.